Hey, I'm Johnny Two Bags, and you're watching Down the Highway.
My name is Ian Harrower, and music has been a part of my life ever since I can remember. I cut hair to make ends meet, and I'm looking for a change. So I'm taking my vintage Triumph motorcycle, and I'm leaving my job, my home, and my girl to take a journey across the U.S. to explore music. So follow me through big cities and small towns of all kinds, talking, listening, and learning about the music that defines and tells the stories of the people and the city they live in. So come with me, down the highway. The first leg of my cross-country trip starts right here in my own backyard, Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles is a city that's music is as rich and diverse as its people, the land of sunshine. A melting pot of a myriad of talented writers, filmmakers, artists, musicians, and visionaries. LA has given birth to bands like The Doors, The Mamas and the Papas, X, The Blasters, Frank Zappa, NWA, and Los Lobos, just to name a few. But knowing all that, I can't help but to ask the question, what is the LA sound? Or does LA have a sound? Is it just a hodgepodge, or can we truly define the sound of the LA experience? Today's episode of Down the Highway, our Los Angeles tour continues with seminal punk rock composer and bass player master Mike Watt. San Pedro, California is hidden away from the hustle and bustle of Los Angeles. This sleepy seaside town is actually the hub for all the imports and exports for this side of the U.S. Charles Bukowski lived in San Pedro, as well as jazz musician Art Pepper. Mike Watt has lived in San Pedro all of his life and has no plans of leaving. Having created the band The Minutemen with his best friend D. Boone, they ripped into the Los Angeles punk scene with their own version of jazz punk and poetry, rapidly becoming one of LA's most influential punk bands. I had the great opportunity to sit down with Mike at his rehearsal space in San Pedro and talk with him about his life and music. All right, here we are sitting with Mr. Mike Watt. Very famous bass player from the punk scene, rock and roll scene. Most people know you from the Minutemen. That was probably the most established band that you'd done. Tell us about the Minutemen.
Yeah, Minutemen. Well, it was me and D. Boone.
Right.
First, then we got Georgie. I got into music playing with D. Boone before punk. And we copied songs. First Creedence, that's all he knew, in his bedroom.
It's not a bad thing.
His mother put me on bass. I was 13, he was 13. And it was a time of arena rock. Our first gig was T-Rex at Santa Monica. No, Long Beach Auditorium.
Oh, right.
It's gone now. I think it's the Opera House there. And we graduated in 1976 from San Pedro High School, and we were just happy up to that point, just copying songs from records. I think most complicated we could play was a Blue Oyster Cult.
That's actually fairly complicated, I would say, at 13.
Yeah. But we didn't have this idea of music as expression. It was like kind of building models. Because the gigs just seemed impossible. We could never play big pads like the Forum, Long Beach Arena, or the Long Beach Auditorium.
Right.
And then there was a cat from here drumming for the Weirdos. And his name was Nicky Beat. And he was walking around. I think he had a Kotex around his neck. And he told us about this scene where people were writing their own songs. Because no one we knew wrote their own songs. It's just another... I know it sounds naive now, but we just didn't know anybody. Nobody... The best guy was the guy who could play Black Dog the best or something.
Right.
Nobody used music as like getting feelings out. It was
Sure.
So we went up and saw these punk gigs, and they wrote their own songs. And the first thing I said to D Boon was, "We can do this." It just was way different than an arena rock gig. And so first we had a band called Reactionaries, which was basically me, D Boon, and Georgie,
Right.
along with a guy named Martin Tamburovich. And we started that in '78. Our first gig was actually opening for Black Flag's second gig.
Nice, perfect.
Here in Pedro. They were handing out flyers at a Dills gig. No, it was Dills, Bo Diddley, and Clash.
Whoa.
And
Wow.
we saw the flyer, and it was like, wow, there's going to be a gig in Pedro. And, they were wondering why we were tripping on that. Because we said, because we're from Pedro, and there's not punk gigs. There's no...
Right.
How do you know that? Because we're the only punk band in that town. They said, you are. Then why don't you open? And so that's how we met them and did that gig.
Awesome.
And this is when we were called Reactionaries.
Oh, okay.
We're not Minutemen until January of 1980. And actually, between Reactionaries breaking up and Minutemen starting, Georgie went and played with a band in Hollywood called Hey Taxi. So the first version of the Minutemen actually had a welder named Frank Tonchi on drums.
Okay.
He was from I think they were called the Polish Eagle polka band.
Yeah, I should have been in that band.
Drummer. And he did a couple gigs with us. In fact, the second gig, Greg Ginn saw and asked us to be SST-002. But on that second gig, Frank got a little freaked by the scene and bailed.
Oh, geez. All right.
Yeah. Nice man, but it was kind of freaky scene for him.
Right.
And we got Georgie back in that summer when Greg wants to record. He learned all the songs in 3 weeks, and we did Paranoid Time, and that's how the Minutemen started.
At that point, you figured you just want to change your name because he was in and then out and then back in as a drummer?
No. Reactionaries is the first time we were writing songs. In fact, D Boon wouldn't even put in songs. He was writing them, but he was keeping them. He was starting to write.
Right.
But he didn't want to bring them to the band. I don't know why, but D Boon wanted to do another band.
Okay.
So he kind of leaves Reactionaries, and Reactionaries fall apart. There was one guy who tried to take over for one gig. There were some gigs we did with the Suburban Lawns at their practice pad in Long Beach. But it kind of fell apart. And it's kind of D Boon's plan because he wanted to start a new band. He wanted to do a trio. When I met him, he only knew Creedence for rock. His daddy was way into Buck Owens. But I turned him on to Cream and stuff. And
okay.
he liked that. Jimi Hendrix and...
Sure.
Even the Who, without the singer, the three, he liked that idea of the three. And in fact, he wanted to put political ideas into making a band. So he wanted he thought the arena rock thing was kind of guitar dominated. And so he wanted to move to a thing where the drums and the bass got up more.
Okay.
Sort of like that Live at Leeds record,
Sure.
or the live one in Wheels of Fire, Cream records.
Right.
He was into that. A lot of the punk bands that we first saw up in Hollywood in the 70s, the bass was very strong. Well, it used to be in the older days, bass was where you put the lame guy. And, like with the punk guys, they were all, just learning.
Yeah, the
so
guy,
it was
yeah,
kind of
just
equal.
Just play these three
and
notes.
so you didn't have these hierarchies. Drummers were very strong in punk bands too.
Yeah, you had to be.
And sometimes the guitar was only just texture, and it was all this rhythm-driven stuff. And so D Boon wanted to make a trio, and he knew Frank Tunch. Me and D. Boone always had a hard time with drummers because we never had practice pad. I grew up Navy housing when I came here from Virginia.
Okay.
And then he was in the Proj, and then after Navy housing, I moved to the Proj, and so we never had a practice pad. So we would have to find drummers. That's how we found Georgie. He had a shed in the back of his pad.
Okay, because a lot of them didn't have
Frank
cars
Tonchi.
to drive stuff around, and you couldn't find guys that could move their drums around. And
Well, no, an actual place to practice.
oh, and a
You
place to
couldn't
actually do
do
it. Yeah,
drum set in an apartment.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Now, when we were teenagers, his brother Joe would play a snare drum with a book on it for like the kick drum. He had a little metal TV stand. He'd use that for the cymbal. You couldn't play too loud.
Right.
It was tiny. So Frank Tonchi was living in a little house in his sister's backyard, so he had a pad. He was a nice man. So it was D. Boone's idea to kind of dissolve Reactionaries and then start again. And then this time with the songs, those first batch, the Reactionaries' first batch, and I ended up writing it. It sounded like a lot of the bands we were watching, and it didn't really, because we were writing songs for our first time. And
Yeah, but it's just like where you started. You mimicked songs that you knew from Creedence and whatnot. Now you're mimicking
when we're seeing it,
what you're seeing because you're learning the scene now. But that makes perfect sense. That's a
Well, with Reactionary, Minutemen, you want to leave that behind, Reactionary. You see, you want Minutemen to be more radical
sure.
in a style approach. So we actually got influenced by bands we didn't see, but we had the records. They were called Wire and Pop Group. And the Wire did little songs.
I love Wire.
And, Pop Group put a Beefheart with the Funkadelic.
Right.
We always thought, well, we didn't always thought, but when we got turned on to punk, we thought bands like Stooges and Beefheart were actually punk bands, and nobody called them that yet.
Yeah.
So
it was also ahead of its time. Then
That's what I mean.
Year-wise, the years
what I
that those
mean.
bands came out.
Because you didn't really know what it was going to be like. It was pictures in Cream magazine and stuff before we ever heard it, and when we heard it, it reminded us of that stuff, or first album of Who, or something
Right.
sort of like. So we figured out what punk really wasn't a style. It's more like kind of state of mind. Each
Sure.
band. There were some bands like Screamers. They didn't even have a guitar, or most of the time Nervous Gender did. And I mean, punk was like D. Boone, his famous quote. The skater guy made me this. Punk is whatever we made it to be.
Awesome.
And so we thought that was a good idea, because then you weren't glued to a style. Everybody could try their own thing, because it
Sure.
seemed like a freaky thing anyway. The situation, a lot of the people in the crowd were in the bands. It seemed like they were taking turns. It was much different than arena rock. It was very empowering on us, and yeah, I don't know. Without punk movement, we would probably just be playing, in the bedroom.
Well, possibly, but I mean, or maybe not. You never know. But I think, yeah,
I don't know.
It
We
seemed
never
like
had an
everything.
idea about trying stuff on our own until we saw these other cats do it.
That's really influenced
they made
you.
us brave.
Well, that's what's so cool about the punk.
What do you make it safe to go crazy?
Yeah,
There was a scene. I remember seeing, my sister took me to a Rocky Horror Picture Show. Was it Tiffany? I think they would have these things.
Right.
And these people would get up and they knew all the words. They would say all the words ahead of time, and then they'd get up on the time warp and get on the screen and start dancing, throwing a toast. And
They still do that. The live shows. You're talking about the live Rocky Horror Picture
they were
Show
movie.
shows.
But the people at the movie would go there and bum rush.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I know it was a play, but
Well, they did. Well, no, I mean, they still do that. Like every Saturday night, they
that's
have
what
the
it was.
Rocky.
It was
Yeah,
one of these things.
right.
Well, I saw a lot of those people at those first punk shows. You could tell. I mean, it wasn't a very big scene. And, coming from Virginia, all I knew was San Pedro. I didn't really know the other towns.
When did you get to San Pedro? How old were you?
10.
Okay, so you grew up in Virginia until you were 10 and then got here, and this is where you've been.
There was a couple of places I had to move to where they had nuclear shit. They had my pop in nuclear engine rooms.
With the military?
He was a sailor.
Okay,
And you call him, his job was machinist mate.
okay.
And so he was with the motor. So nuclear Navy was coming on, so they had to train them. The first reactors they put away, so one was in Idaho, one was in upstate New York.
Right.
Stuff like that. So I came to Pedro because it's closer to Vietnam than Virginia.
Geographically, sure. Yeah,
That
not
was-
by much, but
that's what was happening in 1967.
right. Well, and let's tell for anybody who doesn't know about San Pedro, it's a coastal city in Los Angeles that is where the port of Los Angeles is.
Yeah.
So this is where everything comes into Los Angeles. So that also makes sense for Navy operations because you're right
Well,
here
there
on the
was a
water.
Navy. It's gone. They closed it in the early '80s, but
Right.
between us and Long Beach is Terminal Island,
Right.
and that's where the Long Beach Naval Station was.
Okay, is that where your dad was working out of at the time, or
Well, that's where the ships came out,
Okay.
and so that's why I came to Pedro. Across the graveyard where Bukowski and D. Boone is the Navy housing I came to.
Okay.
Here, it's in the north side of Pedro. But anyway, getting back to being a punk band, it changed. I mean, we got all fired up, and we started playing. But a lot of those bands that we saw a lot of them ended up dissolving. The people stopped going to the gigs. It changed to more younger people from Orange County a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
that-
hardcore music came.
That's where, and that was also where.
It's kind of like Black Flag. But Black Flag's like us, where they were going to the early gigs. But when it comes time to make the bands, that crowd was kind of gone, and a new crowd had come. It was these
Right.
younger people who were still in high school.
And I grew up in Orange County, and I'm younger than that scene. Unfortunately, I wish I was there. But that's where Social Distortion and Adolescence and all those
Jack.
TSOL and all those guys came out of Orange County. I think Jack's
Mike
still in
Palm.
Huntington Beach.
I
Yeah.
saw Mike Palm. There was a club in Hollywood. Its first name was called the King and I. I saw it. It's called the King and I think, and then it became Raji's. But I saw Mike before his voice changed. Mike, if you listen to the song called Bloodstains, he's got a high voice.
Oh, Mike Ness?
No,
Or
Mike Palm.
Oh, Mike Palm. Okay.
Mike Ness always had that Joe Strummer kind of voice.
He's kept his voice. Yeah.
But this is how young Mike was.
Right.
These Orange County guys were getting into it really young, you know. Before that, it was more glitter and glam people or an artist people.
Well, see, you guys.
Interesting types, and the young people too were interesting. It was just kind of different. So when the Minutemen start playing and gigs and stuff, the stuff we learned punk from was a little bit gone, a little bit,
Okay.
or changed.
So that already come and gone in a few years, in a sense.
Yeah, you know, I don't understand social dynamics that much, so I'm not gonna pretend to, but I remember it changing.
I'll never
And,
understand people's attention spans. I'll never understand or be able to nail that down anyways, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah, so Flag kind of tapped into that too, and took us along with him. Our first, we didn't get paid till, we did a lot of free gigs opening up, so we just loved the idea of playing. I remember Starwood was the first paid gig. And they took us on our first tours. They, like I said, with the record label SST. So they were really significant to us in a way because, that scene, I don't know what we were thinking. We never really thought, I remember the Reactionaries made 2 cassettes, from a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm talking 2 copies. It was 1 recording. We only made 2 cassettes, and I kept one, and we gave one to Brendan. By this time, he had the other mask on Santa Monica Boulevard, but that's the only one we asked. We never thought of asking those people for gigs. So
Right.
when Flag came up and had us open up, they were playing some halls a lot of the time. Polish hall, bass hall, Ukrainian hall.
Right, making their own gigs in a sense.
Yeah, the rock and rollers were probably more prejudiced against punk than Square Johns, actually. Square Johns didn't know as much, but man, all the rock and rollers were weirded out on the scene.
Plus, the club owners and the promoters didn't know what to make of it yet. I mean, had
Well,
been
that's
there
what I
for
meant.
a handful of years
That's what I
now,
meant.
but
I didn't
yeah.
just mean the musicians, but people running clubs, just and everybody organized. So Flag just went around it and did their own things. And then there was cats you know, who would find a bar and say, hey, I can bring people in to buy beer if you let me have the door. And so you play in places like Anti-Club and Grandia Room and Fiesta House and stuff like this.
Charging $3 or something at the door.
Yeah. And so we
for 4 or 5
started
bands.
playing their own gigs like this.
Right.
And
hence the bar show was born. That's probably one of the first eras where people were doing the bar shows with 4 or 5 bands, not just, say, cover bands playing top 40 stuff, 3, you know what I mean? So that whole thing was born and still going, you know?
Yeah, that was interesting scene because, you didn't have to play anything prescribed to you. You could come on with your own gig.
Yep.
Which is like we were into.
Yeah, and if the bar owner's making money off beers, and who cares? You know, he's probably like, great. These guys can play, you know what I mean? Fine, perfect.
Yeah.
I don't care
so
what it sounds like.
What I meant to make a point of it was around what was the standard rock thing. You know, it was parallel universe to it. And then I think only the Dills had a van. A lot of those bands didn't even have a band up in Hollywood. You know, but Greg, again, was way into this idea of touring, not playing just your town. So they first took us to San Francisco, and they took us on a U.S. tour that was coupled with a Europe tour. First time we had done either of those things.
Wow.
And it was
like back-to-back, immediate following?
They were all part of the same, both lands was part of the same tour.
Okay.
And then the U.S. one, we're all in the same band. There's 10 of us in one band.
Right.
And very tight, very close.
Sure.
I think Henry writes about it, and we get in the van and stuff. But it inspired us enough, you know. And then Chuck, with his book, his phone book, he literally built the circuit that people are still touring on. And with the Double Nickels on the Dime album, and we started to go out on our own tours. And but to think of no punk movement, to think of no Black Flag, it's hard for me to imagine a Minuteman. Now, we weren't copying them, maybe some ethics, but we thought out of respect, we shouldn't be like a Xerox of Black Flag.
Sure.
Or other brother trios like Husker Du or Meat Puppets.
Sure, and all those bands are all very different from each other, actually. All three you just said, they all sound completely different.
Yeah, but we're all
same
using
vein.
the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Guitar, bass,
Exactly. It's amazing what we can do with just the 3. And that's what was so amazing about the original punk explosion, I guess, you know, is that it gave you guys a platform at a young age to go, okay, we don't have to be these arena rock shredders, these guitar guys who just, you know, there's 2 guitar players or 3 guitar players and all the crazy solos. And that's the kind of stuff that when I was a kid and I first heard that stuff, I loved it, but it intimidated the hell out of me. I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to play like that in my life, ever, you know? And then when I discovered punk, I was like, wow. Because, you know, me and 2 of my buddies can pick up guitar, bass, and drums and go for it. Punk really opened the doors for a lot of people to start playing that otherwise probably wouldn't have ever played out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then from that, now that that's 30-something, you know, years old now or whatever, then you've seen all kinds of offshoots from the original punk explosion, and people you know and whatever just gone on and done so many different things. And so many great forms of music and bands have come out of it now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the other things you've done. You have, you never stop. I mean, every time I pick up a paper or read anything, you have, you know, at any given time, 5 bands or 4 bands. You did some other, what are some of the other bands you did right after the Minutemen?
Yeah, D-Boon got killed in a band wreck in '85, and it was very hard for me.
Yeah.
And I had tried to do something right before that with 2 basses. In fact, it's still going. It's my longest running band. It's called Dose with K. But Thurston got me to play on a Sonic album. We did a thing called Chicone Youth, so that's probably the first thing I did. Then a young man named Ed from Ohio came to my house. I didn't know you had to pay to unlist your number, and he came and called me. Instead of coming over.
Maybe it's a good thing you did call
He
then.
lived under my desk for 9 months. Lived in one room pad, 14th Street here.
Nice.
And 7.5 years we toured around, and I started a little bit doing collaborations like with Steve Shelley, I remember. But at the end of FIREHOSE, I thought I shouldn't have, it's not like with D Boon where I could bring them all my music. Maybe I should have different musics for different groups or something. So I started, trying playing with different people.
Sure, and everything kind of had its own thing. So there was just your solo thing too. There was just Mike Watt. Then there's the Second Men, right, and all these different things that each thing.
Yeah, those bands. Second Man was put together for my second opera. Black Gang was put together for my first opera. Now the Missing Men. Here it is, my third opera.
There you
go.
go.
I just finished it.
Nice.
I kind of went back. I did little songs, just 30 parts, 30 little songs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's trippy. So I started putting together groups, kind of with a defined thing instead of like all my music's going through the one band. Now have different projects.
Outlets for sure. And so now what's
So I'm just a bass player.
what's the inspiration for these for the
opera?
operas?
Yeah, I never thought about those when I was younger.
Well, I still,
was the
I've been
Tommy
playing
one.
for, I'm 31. I've been playing for 23 years, and this, I never thought about doing anything like this yet. This is amazing.
The first one was in '97. I had never dealt with the Minutemen going away or stopping and losing D Boon, and so I don't know. I came up with this idea to. Well, my pop told me that I was kind of. He didn't have music people in his family, so he thought the music was just what I did to be with D Boon, which was true.
Right.
But he didn't know I kept going when he got killed.
Okay.
So he retired at Fresno after the Navy. And so I started sending him postcards, and he was like, yeah, you're like a sailor.
The way you're
That's how he saw, he's from Red Bluff, a little town. And That's how he saw the world was through the Navy. So he thought, in a way. So I got this idea.
So there's a weird connection between you two, you touring around and how he did his thing too. Yeah.
And that's how I put together the first opera. It was a parallel with the boat, the van, and like the boat he was in, that's the way he saw, and this way we saw. And so I used his life in the Navy as like a parallel to tell the story of the Minutemen. I put it all in one day. And the second opera, in 2000, I got a sickness that almost killed me. Bad diagnosis and stuff. And it was a fucking hell ride.
What was the bad diagnosis? They couldn't figure it out, or did they just diagnose the wrong thing?
I got a septic infected. Might have been just ingrown hair, but they gave me these pills that just made it grow, and this thing grew inside me and exploded, and surgery. And,
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I'm glad you.
Well, I made an opera about it, and I paralleled Dante. It was like, because I come from the little song world, but these ideas were too big to put in one song.
Exactly.
So that's why I came up with these fucking opera things.
Well, almost dying is something you can't put into a 2-minute song. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't really tell the story.
The weekend that Darby died, I got pneumonia and almost died. I was in the hospital.
Darby crash.
Yeah, and maybe a week later, I was better, and I didn't write one little 2-minute song about it. No. But when it happened to me 20 years later, I was 22 then. At 42, it was fucked up. I mean, it was longer for one thing, but also it was like, I got a lot of work to do. I can't be fucking dying now. It's really intense on me.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Maybe the emotional connection to it was just something
completely
completely different than when you're 22.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you're aware of it at 22. At 22, you're like, I got pneumonia. This fucking sucks. I mean, you know what I mean?
Burning up with fever. They had ice between my legs and my arms.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But your body's more resilient, and you're just, you're buck wild when you're younger.
Yeah, well, you're in punk bands, and you're having a good time, and a little sickness ain't gonna kill you. That's the way you're looking at it, even though it's a bad sickness. It
was really bad, but I beat it, and I came back. And this other one too, but it was a lot longer coming back.
How long was that hold?
Long hell. Shit, it was long enough that they had tubes in me. I couldn't play bass. It was the first time I stopped playing bass since 50. Boone's mom made me. So
Wow.
it had weird repercussions.
Well, that kind of that shakes you at your very core. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
well, when I started playing, I was all atrophied and, you know, no rhythm, palsy shit. So what I started doing was, you know, Stooges, just playing, you know, there's not a lot of chord changes, huh? And building my fingers up stronger and stronger, trying to get my rhythm back. And then I said, fuck this, I'm going to do some Stooges cover bands, just to play these. I thought the best idea was to get on the horse, you know, get back in the saddle, because it really freaked me out. I thought you weren't supposed to ever forget this shit and hear it.
Right.
It's terrible. So I made one band for the East Coast with Jay Mascis and Murph, the Dinosaur guys, and then Peter and Perk for Porno, and a West Coast one. And at first, like, a few months after being able to play bass again and some prac, I did these gigs. Did one in my scrubs even with Nels and Perk, just doing Stooges. And because this kind of leads up to what I do now, partly.
Well, that's what I was gonna. Yeah, that's what
Jay
I was gonna ask you.
Mascis finished an album called Jay Mascis in the Fog, and he asked me to be the bass player for the tour. And he said, you know, it's hard for me to sing every song every night, so why don't you do some Stooges like we did at those gigs? And I said, okay. And when we came to Ann Arbor, he asked me to call Ronnie because I knew I had done a soundtrack with him, and he'd come to my gigs. So Jay took him on tour. We would do 2/3 of Jay's songs, and then a final third with Ronnie and Stooges songs. And there was an All Tomorrow party at UCLA, maybe 2002, and Thirst said, hey, why don't you get Scotty? And Scotty was living in his truck. He didn't even have a drum set. So they rented a drum set, and so me and Jay are playing with both the Ashton brothers. And did some gigs over in Europe, and Ig heard about it and asked him to play on the Skull Ring, and then I was on tour, my second man in Florida, in Tallahassee. And he called me up. He said, Ronnie says, you're the man. We're going to play Coachella.
This is Iggy Pop that called you up for this.
March 2003, we're going to play.
Okay.
So 7.5 years now, I've been helping the Stooges with bass.
Yep.
Which is
I was going to ask you how that came around.
Actually longer than Minutemen, and about the same as a Firehose. It's been a long time now.
Yeah, I didn't realize you've
because of Ronnie.
been playing with him that long. So it is one of your kind of longest running gigs.
Yeah,
and Coachella was the first gig that you did with them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very interesting. I mean, it is trippy for me because those songs go so far back. And
well, that's what I was about to say.
Much.
When you were a kid, you knew those songs, or we're not. When but you know, when you're a teenager, exactly.
Yeah, and everybody else.
So you come full circle on it.
The only people I met that liked those songs were punk people, and the other people, rock and roll people, didn't like it.
Yeah.
They're like Grand Funk and.
Right. Well, I've always, since I learned about the Stooges when I was a teenager, I just went like, this is a band that's playing punk rock in the late 60s. This is, do you know what I mean? Like, this is 8 or 9 or 10 years ahead of the Ramones and the Clash and the Sex Pistols, you know.
So much information, second and third, fourth hand, I get to be right with the source people.
It's great.
Very interesting. Yeah, I would have never guessed this about my life.
It's amazing. It's amazing because you said earlier on when we were talking about how, the Stooges and Beefheart and some of these people, you're listening to them at that, and now you're doing it. Now you're playing with the Stooges. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing to me that it came around like that.
It is. I feel I really owe them everything I got, my best notes, because I don't think we'd have a scene without the Stooges.
And then Coachella, how big was the crowd that was standing out there watching you guys? Was that the biggest crowd you'd ever been in front of your life at that point?
No. I had done things. After Firehose, I had done. I was really weirded out about having to, front a band. The bass is a backup. Politically, the bass is very interesting. You look good making other people look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go in the bathroom, and most people look at the tile. We're kind of like the grout. So.
Yep.
It is scary for me, but I had an idea. Well, bass player knows a song maybe anybody can play, so I've made a record called Ball Hugger Tugboat that had 48 different people, and did tours, even with FIREHOSE opening for Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
Or there were some big crowds.
Sure.
Okay.
Minutemen REM.
Yeah, actually, the last Minutemen tour, I wouldn't call those really huge because it was, tertiary, third tier. And
that's Minutemen out
Southeast.
with REM.
Yeah, our last tour was, we were asked by this band to open up for, we didn't know them. They turned out to be beautiful guys. Yeah, we didn't know a lot about them. We had to buy a record to see what they sounded like.
Sure.
But they turned out to be really happening cats, and they knew a lot about music. I taped Last Poets of Pete Buck's band and stuff. We didn't know. We didn't know everything. We knew a lot about punk bands because of fanzines and stuff. That was very happening. In fact, the singer man, Michael, interviewed us for a fanzine the year before. We toured with him. Didn't tell us who he was.
Okay. Was it over the phone or something?
No,
or
no.
you sat down?
He came to a 688 club in Atlanta.
Okay.
And interviewed us after soundcheck. He's a nice man.
Yeah, it seems like he probably would be.
Those were gigs like some were civic auditoriums, some were gyms, high school gyms. But they were pretty big for what we were used to before that.
Sure.
But then opening up for people, and like that one in Ball Hugger Tugboat album, I did RFK Stadium, when these radio gigs, because of Nirvana had changed, they were having people play these big pads, K-Rock type of stations. And
right.
I just look at gigs as gigs. Those were very hard ones to work because it's, I'm more used to, the little clubs.
Sure.
But with Stooges, I learned how to play more and more of these Europe festivals.
The big stages with the
big
crazy
many
sound,
people.
and yeah, where things just don't bounce around like they do in a little club. You have to have
and
your
there's no
sound
contact with the people. You're more detached, like in a way.
Yeah. You got a 20-foot.
Although with Stooges, I mainly focus on Iggy anyway because it's a strange situation because those songs, they're not foreign to me. They're really embedded in me. So I get into hearing them so hard that I forget where I am on the bass. So I have to really focus on it and keeping it together, even though there's not a lot of chord changes.
That makes you the perfect man for the job, though.
He's really helped me play bass better and stuff. First time I helped another band was actually in '96 with Porno for Pyros. I've only done it for a couple bands.
Okay.
Porno for Pyros, Jay Mascis and the Fog, and the Stooges. Perry, very interesting cat.
Well,
too.
it's interesting to come into a gig like that because you're it's not that you're trying to fill somebody else's shoes, but the foundation's already been laid by another player.
Yeah.
And so it is very interesting to come into that, whether you're familiar with the material or not. Now, going back to the Stooges, like you said, that stuff is so embedded in you that it makes you the perfect man for the job. I couldn't even think of a better person to be playing bass with Iggy and the Stooges right now than you because of that connection you have to it. You know what I mean? But I'm sure you can't help but drift off into thoughts sometimes about, wow, I was a teenager when I learned this, about these guys, and this has been going on for X amount of years, and wow, I'm standing up here with these guys now.
You want to hear the song, but
yeah.
You got to help make it.
But you have to help execute it now. You start drifting off, like, hey, I'm in the crowd watching the Stooges. Then you wake up and you look down and see the crowd looking at you. You're like, oh yeah, I'm playing bass in this band.
I don't want to. I really owe that band. So, music's just a thing. That's why I love Ig on stage. His work ethic, it's a lot like D. Boone. He tries very hard. You don't take anything for granted,
That's great, and you shouldn't. You never should.
Yeah, that's what I like.
I'm learning that. I'm still, I'm working on my thing, and I've actually mainly been a bass player and drummer my whole life in music. I'm only right now, for the first time in my life, playing guitar in a band right now at this moment. So I understand your job. That's what I've always done. Mainly drums, but bass also a little bit. Now, I say the word job, and
it's a job.
That brings me to something I want to ask you. You're probably going to hate me for asking you this, but I think it's very valid as in showing what kind of work people can do with music. I heard that you have done something with Kelly Clarkson, right? The original American Idol, the girl who won the first season.
Producer to come in the studio, and they had me play on 6 songs.
Off for her first record or something?
I don't really know her career. I got to meet her.
Okay.
She was just regular people.
Sure.
You wouldn't even know, except to hear her sing. She could sing good. She had no big posse or anything. Or nothing. I heard she had won a game show, and I didn't really know a lot about her. They didn't really tell me what to play. Sometimes they put fuzz. You could use a fuzz box or something, and they let me play my old basses, and it was a lot looser than you think. Yeah, I know it's really commercial and stuff now, especially I hear from, when I did it, I heard from other people, but it wasn't that much of a thing. I came in there one night and just started playing on these songs.
Sure.
And that whole situation is kind of weird. I don't know if you've ever done that work, but you have to come in there. It doesn't matter who it is, a Mersh or avant-garde or whatever. You got to hear the song, you got to learn it, then you got to think of a part. It's all done.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
Some of these, I think I was even playing over somebody's bass line. You know, they took them away, or was a MIDI keyboard or whatever.
Yep.
But it was all made, and then everybody's looking at you and shit. And you don't want to look stupid. You want to do good for them, do good for the song, right?
Yep.
There's a responsibility with the bass. You got to do certain things. In my book, to make it work.
Sure, absolutely.
I was kind of sweating some fucking bullets. The guitar man who helped to write the song was a skater from Houston and knew all about my scene. It wasn't such a freaky thing. I think if you see my name next to hers, she told me she wasn't in band. She learned how to sing in church.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. She didn't come up the way like we all came up. It's a whole different thing. But my point is, there's work out there, and even though it is very pop and that's a very commercial thing, it could be really cool. And they asked you to do it because of who you already were. If somebody knew the producer, or somebody knew you, and they're like, let's bring him in. That would be awesome. He'd be awesome to have on this. Whereas just being a guy that's hired on. But I have done something exactly like that. I played bass on an Australian pop song. I came and played bass over a bass track that was already laid down. I guess it was like Tom Jones, his drummer, had laid the drum tracks down. These guys came in and they were just like, okay, do this, do that. They were feeding me a bunch of wine. I'm like, I don't know if I should be drinking all this wine because I got to figure, So I've done that. Played on a song that I have, like a style, like total pop song that I've never done before, with guys I've never worked with before, a song I've never heard before, and then they're giving me stuff like, okay, play this one like you'd play it in a punk band. Okay. Now play this one like you were playing an upright bass right now. Okay, so I'm just like, and yeah, talk about sweating bullets. I had to keep like a rag right next to me and wiping my head, wiping my hands, going, this is crazy. All these guys are standing around, like, hoping that I lay down like the perfect thing, like the most perfect thing they've ever heard in their lives. You know what I mean? So I've been just once in that kind of intense situation. That's the only thing I can relate to. As far as doing what you did with Kelly Clarkson. Yours is probably a little more relaxed than mine.
No, it was scary for me. It was scary. They were very cool. They were not telling me what to do or anything, but it was scary because I wanted to do good for, her, the guitar man, Jimmy, the producer man who called me in, David. That whole thing kind of expectations, But I don't know about making a whole thing of that. There's something about what I did to get into music. It was about the boon. It was to be with my friend,
Sure.
So I don't know if I'm such a pure musician, although I do. A lot of my life is about music.
Look, yeah. I would say that's not. See, that's all a matter of opinion. I would think you're probably the purest of musicians because it came from such an organic place, and that's what I like. That's the kind of stuff I like. I came from an organic place. I'm not a taught musician. I just learned how to play a bunch of instruments, And that being said, what do you think of the music scene in this city today, in Los Angeles? What do you think about what's going on? Do you have an opinion about it? You were part of a very quintessential, piece of the music, of music history
about this
in
town?
California,
It's kind of interesting, like other towns.
To say the least.
It's got problems. It's got good things. One thing about SoCal is there is a lot of different places.
Sure.
It's not always going back to the same well, the same trough. There's different regions.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I am part of SoCal, Pedro guy, but I just didn't do music like that. You know, because of Greg and the Flag guys, we learned to tour. So I just did my 63rd tour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 63rd tour.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I've played a lot outside the town.
Sure.
Okay. But and you were saying before, you see me, I play 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a month. Because there's a lot of different places. And
Mike Watt and something. Right, Mike Watt and this. Mike Watt and that.
And I'll play the smallest pads, right?
Yeah, that's great. No, that's great.
Even Pedro here, there's a biker bar that started having punk gigs.
There you go.
Yeah, short drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, finally. Just have to go around the corner. Well, I mean, you know, it's hard. The scene changes. And the reason why I ask you, and the reason why we're talking to you, you know, is because you were the start of, you know, you were there at the start of a scene that has now become an infamous and famous and very important part of music history. So I'm curious as to what your opinion is about any...
Well, without those old days, I wouldn't be what I am today. I owe everything to the old days.
Sure. Neither would music today. The music would be totally different as well, even without all those punk bands, you know. They never existed.
Probably, but, you know, I'm speaking for me. I know for sure that I'm a product of my post experience, and so a lot of it I don't feel I grew out of, and it was just a stepping stone to my professional music here. Basically, I'm doing a lot of what I did in those days because I liked the way that worked. I liked the ethic of it. I liked it's like riding a skateboard, you know, you fall down, you have to get back up. I mean, how do you improve on that kind of ideology?
Sure.
You know, you have people help you back up. People who ride the skateboard for you, people run alongside you, making sure you don't fall down. I mean, how do you improve this? Do you use your body to ride it? Do you sit down on it? Do you lay down? Oh, you know,
right.
All this kind of stuff. That I could use that for an analogy, and so
it makes sense.
What worked for me back then still works now. Now, I don't want to. Respect to the guys I played with and shared with, I don't want to copy exactly the old days. And I'm a little bit of a sentimentalist, but you know, I do coming into middle age, sincerely believe that everybody's got something to teach me. So if I put my bass in situations, and this is part of, you know, what some people say the bad new days is. Actually, it's good. I can collaborate with people without them having to be in SoCal or even Pedro.
Yeah,
I
right.
trade files with people over
amazing.
The internet, and I made an album with this cat in Canada. I never even met. Never met this guy. You know, he gave me 10 songs. I put the bass on it. Okay.
And that was it. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how that works now?
You know, I've done other. No, do it again. When thing is I think 18 tries. Finally, I got it.
Right.
And see, I've been doing it this long.
Sure.
So what? I think that's one thing that should never be solved is the problem of being creative and coming up with good shit.
Absolutely.
Or shit.
Well, music. I don't think you can ever be the master of music or the master of your instrument. I don't think anybody can. There's people we look at and you're like, wow. That guy stands alone, you know, in playing ability. But he's still not going to be the master of that instrument. You know what I mean? It's something you can always strive to do, is be better or learn different things. Because look how many styles there are now. Music's, you know, starting to gain some age.
Think about a writer. A writer cannot invent one word and still write an interesting novel. He's using all the words everybody else is.
Yep.
That's the way you put it together. And
exactly.
Just because you write this one good book, that don't mean the next one's going to be happening. It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
But I would rather have the burden be there, the challenge there on what to be created, than the thing where how do we get a practice pad? How can I get a bass? How can I get the money up for recording? In the old days, music parts, to get it going, the amplifiers, all this, there was a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
It's more econo now.
Oh, sure.
And then the way we can reach each other, much more close. I don't have to answer adder and recycler and end up. Although those were interesting. One time I did that.
Yeah. I'm sure
Yeah, at
they
first
were.
D-Boon, when I saw that first gig, D-Boon wouldn't make a band at first. And so I answered an ad. And then these cool people, we did I Want to Be Your Dog for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I drove the first time
All the way back to the Stooges again.
I ever played in a pad on Santa Monica Boulevard. It was this guy's, his father's electric shop. And we played in the back there. And yeah, it was trippy, because here I am, I want to be in a punk band, but T-Boone don't want to do it. And so I tried this,
Frustrating.
and I did it one time, and it was like, I liked it, but man, D-Boone was in there. And then a couple of weeks later, he says, okay, I'll do one.
There you go. You convinced him. Because he saw you starting to stray off. He's like,
I don't know, maybe he did.
I can't let my buddy go off alone.
Yes.
Well, so...
I've always had a close connection with it, but I lost him, So
Yeah.
music, though, is still a very intense thing. That something he gave me, a gift, or shared with me. So now I try to do it with other people. Of course, it's not going to be the same, but I'm trying to get better at being a student, student, and learn from these situations. And I listen back to me and Georgie playing for D-Boone, on those records, and it's amazing some of the stuff. I can't believe I played some of that stuff, but it was, a lot of it. Of course, me and D-Boone would come up with the things, wouldn't even have to show each other. And then Georgie playing with me. A lot of it was the product of me interacting.
Sure.
That's what I'm trying to say. Think of the politics of the bass, or a glue. Here's a better one, glue. If you got nothing to stick to, you're just puddle.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not under its own kind of thing so much the way I'm looking at it. And so this is what I'm doing now. I've got a lot more brave where I can just go. Like last December, I went to Italy. I did 6 gigs with these 2 cats, 20 years younger. And I did an album just like that. Bam.
Nice.
It was scary. I never played with them before in my life, but they're incredible cats and made me pasta every day. And
Nice.
So maybe I got 13, 14 things in the pipeline now. I really did get away from recording for a while. I told you those 2 operas.
Yep.
And there was some unknown instructor, these kind of improvised albums I did with Georgie and Joe Baiza. But I was doing many, many gigs, to do 63 tours. Well, a little out of balance because I never had children. I mean, the recordings, the works. Gigs are important. They're in the moment, but they go in the air and stuff. So I've been I still do the gigs, of course.
Well, yeah, you still have to document, though, what you're doing.
Yeah, I have stuff like D-Boone. I mean, we can hear him play if you put on a Minutemen record.
You can still, he's
and it was
still
so
there.
funny
Yep.
because we never thought of it that way. In those days, I remember me and D-Boone had this talk. He said, we're going to divide the world into 2 categories. There's going to be flyers and gigs. And we thought the gig was the biggest thing there was because it had the most impact on us when we saw a punk gig. And so we thought everything that was in the gig was a flyer. So a record, an interview, a picture. These were all things to get people to the gig.
Sure.
But more in these years now, I'm looking at it as, no, these are actually, you can't live the whole time.
Well, when you're young,
so these objects,
getting to the gig is all that mattered.
What just seemed the gig was us and the people and hardly anything in between. If we fucked up, it was us.
Yeah.
You couldn't blame a gatekeeper or a middleman or something.
Right.
So it seemed like that was the most intense thing, that you could wield. But there's something, you can do this with the records too. They're not just flyers. They can be little works. They have little lives of their own in a way.
Sure.
Yeah, but we didn't, I'm glad we did them. We were doing them every 9 months then. It was like flyers, but it ended up being a kind of legacy.
Absolutely.
And that's how we can hear D-Boone, we never thought about dying then. We never weren't that fatalistic.
Well,
we thought somebody was going to make
about
us stop. There was a weird thing about the Minutemen. We thought somebody's going to make us stop, but stopped making music, not like by one of us getting killed. We didn't realize that. We didn't think about
Right.
that. Even though his ma got killed, and we just graduated high school, and it was huge wreckage on us. But I don't know. You just have different kind of consciousness in those days, or I did, and a little different now. And so I want to make more works now. But I also want to do the gigs.
Sure. Well, you can't deny the gigs.
I played a pizzeria last night in Long Beach.
Perfect.
I played a pizzeria in the Valley the night before.
Perfect.
And with Kay, Kay, I've been playing 25 years.
Right.
Okay. These guys I played with, they're longshoremen. They got families. They work the docks. I'm going to make an album next year about work. The San Pedro dock worker guy, D-Boon would love it.
Yeah, there you go.
So I have a lot of reasons to play.
Well, he's still part of what
that
you
are
do.
part of those ethic. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's not really. I still have that part of those old days in me,
Absolutely.
and it's not so much for surface in the lifestyle or something.
Well, sure, but you said now you're a sentimental guy, so of course you're going to keep your buddy with. I have a buddy that I've been playing with for 18 years out of my life that I would feel I would be devastated if anything ever happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we haven't played together for about a year and a half or 2 years now because I went on to do some other projects. So I'm already sentimental about what we've done together. We hang out together and we look at each other like, oh man, even though we see each other every couple of weeks, we miss each other dearly because we haven't played together in a year and a half or 2 years. So I get it. Like, but he's here. He's still here. He's still with us. But I get that attachment that you can have with somebody and how it's just
Man, in a lot
meld.
of ways he isn't here. I used to ask him everything,
Yeah.
and I don't get answers. He
Well,
wants me to think about it.
I know that is well. Let's move. I mean, you've talked very thoroughly about that, and we appreciate it. So let's actually move on to pretty much what this show is about that we're doing. You still being out there and still playing with people and doing new projects and recording an album over the computer with a guy from Canada, whatever. This episode of this show is about the city of Los Angeles, where we all live. Yeah. Do you think, this is a strange question and it could be answered any way you want because there's no real answer to it. Do you think there is an LA sound? I mean, you were part of the beginning of the punk scene. You've played with all kinds of different people. You're still playing with all kinds of different people. Is there anything about this city, Los Angeles, that has a sound?
Early I was telling you about punk, and like people were trying to say it was a style, and we didn't think it was a style. We thought it was up to each band. And I'll say the same thing. I'm just too in love with music to get it all narrow like that.
Sure.
So everybody's going to have their own take on it.
And
we
absolutely
share the same weather, the same traffic. Actually, Pedro, a lot of people come here to go, wow, I didn't know this place existed.
Right. That's where your car came from. That's where all those things you just bought came from. They all came right through those gates right there, those water gates. How could you not know Pedro's here?
It's called the Angels Gate.
Angels Gates. There you go.
Actually, we share the harbor with Long Beach. So
I guess that's true. Yeah.
I'll tell you about SoCal. It's actually like 150 towns. I found this out going to those first punk shows. Like none of us knew each other. We didn't grow up, go to school with each other. We all met up in Hollywood. I met these guys like Pettibone, who ended up, being my dearest friend. Incredible cat who taught me all kinds, taught me about John Coltrane.
Which you have a poster right up there.
I have him on my shirt.
Yeah, and you got his button right there.
Yeah. So this was kind of this might be endemic to like a situation is this idea of the only thing we really had in common was stuff like Stooges, that brought us to this music, this scene, they were like the lingua franca, but everything else, everyone had a different story they were coming from. And so maybe there was something in that, like you could be from anywhere and make a band. But as far as the sound, I don't know if there was something like that. Somebody once told me it's not where you're from, it's where you're at.
Exactly, and that's why that question is so interesting, about an LA sound, because I can't answer that. I mean, is it the fact that, it took us an hour to get, 10 miles today to come see you, like the traffic in this city, the fact that there was two or three on-ramps to the freeway closed, we couldn't even get on the goddamn freeway. I mean, it's stuff like that could actually influence people to have a certain sound in a city like this. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I was like you too.
Kind of balkanized, and we're in our own little trips.
And see,
I remember people telling us early on too, you should move to Hollywood. That's where it's all happening. I remember D. Boone saying, well, if we move to Hollywood, what are we going to write songs about? Hollywood. So maybe we just stay in Peterborough. We're close enough where we can play there.
Yeah.
But maybe we live in our town and write about that kind of stuff or
Absolutely.
something. Or, yeah, I don't know. There's something transcendent about music. John Fogerty, very Northwest Bayou he was born on.
Yeah, about 5 hours north of here, the mid-central California Bayou. That band, that's a whole nother band we could talk an hour about. They amazed me for where they came from.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were coming out of a scene of Jefferson Airplane and Grateful Dead. And yeah, I don't know if they were part of that sound so much.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I was amazed.
They're around the same area.
And they were playing all the same shows.
I guess they were East Bay.
They were playing all the same shows. They became
And who else is from up there? Sly Stone?
East Bay Ray.
Yeah, in East Bay Ray later on with the Ted Kennedys.
But you're right about the people.
So would we say that about their part? Or I don't know. I don't know. This idea of getting things figured out sometimes it's maybe giving in a little bit to the marketing people. And I don't think it's a modern thing. I mean, Pat Boone sold many more Tutti Fruttis than Little Richard.
Yeah.
And that was like 55 years ago or something.
Yeah, and that was the beginning of it all,
So I don't worry about it too much. But I do know I was reliant. We, us Minutemen, were reliant on people living in SoCal. And then, because punk, there was little scenes in all the towns, and through the fanzines, through their bands, through playing their towns, conking in their pads, we made connections like this.
Yeah.
And still didn't want to copy your brothers,
Sure.
Though I doubt there would have been a double nickels on the dime if there wasn't first a Zen Arcade. We were very inspired by them to do that. So we're bouncing off each other, but they're Minneapolis, and we're San Pedro. But in some ways, maybe we were within our towns, we were kind of more alike than the people we were living with in our towns.
And that same thing kept going to my generation of punk rockers. I grew up in South Orange County in a very stale, sterile little area that had 30 little cities, and believe me, there was 3 punker kids from Laguna Beach, and we met the 6 punker kids from, like Costa Mesa area, and out of that whole place, there was like 20 of us. You find those like minds, and you get together and you play music, and you're influenced by. Luckily, you guys had already laid the foundation for us. All the bands that you played with and the bands that you were in, that we had an influence, but we were doing it in a place that didn't have any forgiveness for that kind of music. So we were making our own shows. We were driving to LA trying to play shows. We were doing the same thing, backyard parties all over the place. And then you get on the road and you start touring, and you find those 10 kids just like you in Phoenix. And you find those 10 kids just like you in some town in Texas. And there you go. You're right. Like you were saying, Minneapolis, your buddies in Minneapolis and your buddies here, shared a common thing. And we did that with, the 10 kids we knew in Orange County.
So maybe SoCal is like a microcosm of that thing. Because we're already starting with that because we're all spread out.
And then LA becomes sort of like the cluster of it all, because you get all those people from those other states, that want to bring it here for some reason. You know, those,
Oh, yeah.
that band wants to get out of
I
wherever
found
and
that
come
out
here.
even that 70s punk scene. There was a lot of cats that weren't from here.
Yep.
They came from states back east, the Controller people,
Yeah.
X people.
Yep. It became some of the most quintessential sounds
The
of Los
Dills
Angeles.
were like Carlsbad down by San Diego.
Yeah. There's-
Phoenix thing too. Phoenix.
Ye-
LA.
Don.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of stuff actually came out of San Diego too, because San Diego was still
Zeros.
as sterile as Orange County was. So
Zeros were National City.
everyone looked toward LA from down there, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, so the regional thing, there's something about it, but I don't think it's a musical aesthetic so much.
But you've made it happen here. You've stayed. You came to Los Angeles when you were 10.
Oh,
You
yeah.
stayed. You know, and I came here from Orange County, and I love it here, and I'm never gonna leave. And I
Yeah.
love the music scene here. And I love what it's done for me.
I like
even though not
living in
much,
San
but
Pedro. I do kayak and bicycle,
I miss the
but
water.
I'm healthier.
Right.
When my knee's not fucked up. And so it's like bungee cord. So I go out and I play a lot of different places, but I come back to Pedro.
Perfect.
You roam, you roost.
Yep. I'm never leaving Los Angeles. This is it for me. We're going to do a number that the Minutemen did called Party With Me Punker. You and I are going to play that song together. Tell me about the origins of that song. It's an interesting little song. 56-second song? 57 seconds?
Yeah, well, Minutemen did even shorter ones. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
we were asked to do a song for a compilation. Jordan Schwartz, We Got Power. Dave Markey was affiliated with it too. I just thought I would write him a song, and I was thinking of Davo too. Davo was a helper man for Black Flag, and they would say words like that, "Party with me, punker." I didn't really say that stuff, but they did.
Little
And
inside fun little things.
I thought, well, punk means different things to different people. I'll tell you, when I first heard the word, it was very strange because here a punk was a guy who got fucked in jail for cigarettes. So when they call this music scene this, it was like, whoa, okay, what's this about?
Really? You guys want
So
me to
it
play
means
any
different
punk
thing.
rock? What?
Yeah, punk, okay. So, it's all about, and an interesting thing I heard once too was the only thing new is you finding out about it. You know, we found out a lot of the stuff in the scene people were doing before. And it was just us finding out about it, like Woody Guthrie or them Dada people in Europe, 50 or 60 years before. It's a trip about that. So you have to let go a little bit and not get so precious. Of course, it's very important for you because it's your experience, and you're sharing it with your guys, But as far as like getting too high and mighty to use it as club to beat on other people, had to let it go. And so by doing that song, it was the same reason I wrote History Lesson Part 2. It was like saying, it's not just about, well, Joey Ramone once told me, he said, punk is like a big wagon, and if you got something to contribute, get on board,
There you go.
So
Throw it in the back of the wagon. Makes perfect sense. And what's so funny about that song, it never landed on a proper Minuteman record. I
No,
mean,
we did it we
the
were asked to be
compilation.
part of a compilation.
Sure, but it was written for a compilation, and it's very easy for songs to get lost on compilations. I mean, I've done that. I've contributed some of the best songs I've done with some of my band's compilations. Never went anywhere, and it's gone, But this song, you can go on, YouTube, and like every band playing, wherever they're playing is covering this song. It's like a song that broke through somehow. It's short, it's quick, to the point, it's fun, and tons of bands have covered it. And it could have very easily become like a lost number, just another number.
Oh, well, the whole thing is amazing about young people these days, and they're being open-minded to the old days. I got to tell you, when I was a teenager, you wouldn't listen to 5-year-old music. I give a lot of credit to young people being interested in what happened so long ago.
Sure.
That's very kind of them.
Mike, thank you so much
Respect.
for doing this for us.
No problem.
Thank you, Michael.
It was fantastic. Party with me, punker. Party with me, punker. In a condo, in an area shelter, in a voting booth, a massive BOGO. Party with me, punker. Party with me, punker. With napalm, with marijuana, with the clenched fist, with the history of the world. Party with me, punker. Party with me, punker. Party with me, punker. Yeah. We did it.
Yeah. Nice.